Greetings, students! This instructional video is to go over the requirements for the syllabus/parent letter on grading procedures that is required for the Daytona State College Classroom Assessment course. If you look here at the syllabus, you can see in red the purpose of this is really wrapped up in 3 different FEAPs, which are our educator accomplished practices that we use here in Florida. So the first one is that you are going to demonstrate that you can model acceptable written communication. We also want to make sure that you understand how to communicate and collaborate with parents and the student's home, whoever is at home with the students, so parents, guardians, grandparents. And that is going to be accomplished by making sure that you communicate your policies and procedures in the syllabus or parent letter. And then finally, this also meets the FEAP for identifying and applying policies and procedures for safe, appropriate, and ethical use of technologies. So let's get into explaining what all is required for this particular assignment. Most of you know what a syllabus is. In fact, you're looking at one. You're looking at the syllabus for this course. Those of you that have been through a standard K-12 education program have probably received several syllabi. And if you think back to your elementary years, you probably didn't get a syllabus, but you may have gotten a letter home which explained things about the classroom to your parents. And that's exactly what you're making here. Now, if you're already a classroom teacher and working regularly in a school, you probably have developed something just like this for your students, which is great because all you're going to do is take that and modify it for this class, making sure that all of the requirements that are in this assignment are covered in your particular syllabus or parent letter. So pull that item out and be prepared to do some editing because most likely you will have to add and perhaps subtract. You probably don't need to really subtract anything, but you definitely need to add some different things to your syllabus and parent letter to make sure that you have this done correctly. So the main difference is that you are going to put this in APA formatting. Now, the entire thing doesn't have to be APA formatted because obviously a syllabus or a parent letter is not usually written in an APA format. But what I'm asking for in terms of APA is that you have a correct APA title page. You can see here that I'm looking for the author's note and an abstract. And then I'm also going to look for a reference list. Now, what falls between those, your parent letter and your syllabus, if you want to use kind of a friendly font because you're an elementary teacher, you want to put some clip art, or you want to do some bullets in different sections, or maybe sometimes people design it like a newsletter, all of that's fine. You don't have to APA format like this, like a standard research paper, the bulk of this assignment. You just need to make sure the title page is correct, the abstract is correct, and then if a reference page. Okay, so what all is required? So that all these bullets must be in your paper. Looking for a personal introductory statement. So like a welcome statement, who you are, what your name is, what course this is. It should be very clear what subject and grade level that this syllabus or parent letter addresses, and then you should reference the fact that you're going to teach the Florida standards, whether they're the next gen or the Florida standards that we have for language arts and mathematics. It would be great if you would put a link to CPALMs so parents can go find those standards. It should be really clear what you're teaching, but you do not need to copy and paste all the standards in there. My goodness, some of your courses have over 100 standards. I do not need them listed, and neither do your parents. And those of you that teach multiple subjects, like if you're doing a 3rd grade letter home to parents, you are not going to put all of the standards for all of your subjects. You're just simply going to make the commitment that in your class you will teach the standards. And so identify that and tell parents where they can find them. All right, the next one, which is a really big one, is an explanation of how the final grade would be calculated. Just like you saw in this syllabus, it is very clear what kind of assignments I'm giving, how much they are worth, and how I will calculate your final grade. So the same thing should be communicated for your students and your parents. What kind of assignments or activities are you going to give? And there's some here in the parentheses. Do you give tests? Do you give quizzes? Is there homework? Do you have journals that are graded or performances or projects? Is there labs that your students will engage in that will be graded? Whatever it is that you plan to give, those should be outlined and should be somewhat described, a brief narrative description. It really does mean brief. Most people know the difference between a test and a quiz. Generally, folks know what a science lab is, but just a brief description of these things that you're going to be giving as assignments/assessments for your class. And then the second bullet here says that you need to come up with the percentages or points that will be assigned to each activity. Now, if you're in Volusia County Public Schools, there's some pretty strict guidelines in the grading guidelines for all teachers to follow. And so this is actually really easy for you. Diagnostics are worth nothing. Formatives are worth 40% and summatives are worth 60%. I might have that backwards. Whatever it is in Volusia County schools, make sure that that is put into your parent letter or syllabus so parents are well informed on that. And then of course your percentages should be adding up to 100. Now, if you're not in Volusia County schools, if you're in another county, or if you're in a private school, this might be something you can decide on your own, or it might be something that your school or your other county designates for you. Make sure it's clear. And if you're in pre-K or an ESE classroom or K1, then it's also up to you to make sure that your specific grading scheme is explained to parents. Now, this is one sometimes students forget, but it's important. And even though it's the same for all classes, you do need to put in that Florida state statute requires that we have a 90, 80, 70, 60 grading scale. So please make sure that you put in how you earn an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. And yes, that is in statute. You cannot change that. So unless you're in a private school, then it's different. You might have a different grading scale, but that should be communicated to parents. They might be new from out of state or might be new to public school, or it doesn't matter. They might have, put 5 kids through the public school systems. You still need to put in writing how you will calculate and display your students' grades. Now, this next section is about your specific policies. And again, some of this may be designated for you, like perhaps your PLC has already decided this, your grade level, your school might already have policies that you have to follow, or your district. But regardless, in this parent letter syllabus, you need to clearly communicate how are you going to deal with late work, failed assignments, assignments that occurred during an absence, and if you've got policies for makeups for low grades. All of this should be in writing. The last thing you want to do is make this kind of stuff up as you go. Number one, you'll be very inconsistent. And number two, you're going to upset parents and students because it's not in writing and they don't know ahead of time. So even if you're in a grade level, like let's say you're in a pre-K or a kindergarten classroom, late assignments probably isn't going to be a big problem for you. But you can still address that and saying that, students will be given extra time as they need to get things turned in up until the end of the quarter. Something very general like that, whatever works for you and for your classroom. If you're in a high school biology class, late assignments might be a whole another world for you to deal with because you don't want to get too behind, in terms of grading, and you've got strong policies, related to turning things in on time. So this can be flexible based on your assignment for teaching. Talk with some colleagues and talk with your directing teacher if you don't have your own classroom. If you do have your own classroom, you've probably got these things established by now, but make sure it's spelled out in this assignment, all 4 of these things. All right, on the next page, we've got a couple more items. The first thing here is a description of what technology will be used to organize and integrate your assessment information. And what this means is, what are you using for an online gradebook? Just about everyone has this. So very rarely do you find a school or a district that's still depending on paper gradebooks and hand calculations. So what is it? Is it the VIMS or gradebook system in Volusia County? Is it Skyward? Is it Focus? Is it Grade Machine? Make sure parents know what it is and how they can access their students' grades. This next bullet is to make sure you have in writing that you understand that accommodations and modifications for your ESOL and your ESE students with an IEP will be followed. It is important that you put that commitment in writing, and it only has to be a sentence or 2, but it definitely needs to be communicated that you understand that if there are accommodations and modifications, you will be using them. Then, of course, you need to follow through on that. This is a legal matter. It's federal law, and so make sure that you are aware of what accommodations and modifications your students need and that you adhere to those. You also need a statement about your policies and procedures for the safe, appropriate, and ethical use of technology. So remember, this was one of our FEEPs, but it's also a big issue in today's classroom. And it doesn't matter what grade level you're in. I don't care if you're in multi-VE pre-K or if you're in 12th grade AP history. You need a policy for safe, ethical, and appropriate use of technology. It doesn't matter what age your kids are. They are coming with technology. There's technology in our classrooms. So how are you going to handle it? Do you let them use it at will? Do you let them never allow them to use it? Do you have BYOT days? Do you post a sign for BYOT? Does your school have a policy and you just follow that? Does your school have a policy but you employ something stricter? Whatever it is, it needs to be very clearly spelled out here how, when, and if your students can use their own technology or if you'll be providing technology. And that's just to protect you and make sure that you have it in writing for the use of that technology. You also need a brief explanation of your behavior management system and how it is assessed. Rewards and consequences are probably more elementary, primary school focused. So lots of times in younger grades, there's a lot of rewards built in, as well as consequences for behavior through the day. But regardless, every single classroom needs a behavior management system. Again, even if you're in 12th grade AP economics, you need to clearly say, these are the behaviors I expect, and here's what happens if you don't follow them. As the older students get, the less likely they need behavioral rewards in class. But I'm looking for your behavior management system and at the very least your consequences. And then, for the younger grades, if you have rewards built in, then that's appropriate as well. You can include that. If you have some kind of point system, like where they're earning points, maybe use Class Dojo or maybe use, frogs and clothespins or, there's all kinds of systems out there. You can explain that system as well. I wouldn't expect you to grade behavior and have that in a grade book, but whatever system you use to kind of calculate grades or basically assess behavior, not really grade them, but assess, you've misbehaved or you've done well. Explain all of that. Okay, and then information on how the parents, any parent, regular ed, ESC, or ESOL, doesn't matter, can contact you with questions about your grading procedures or about their student in general. So I'm looking for something specific here. How can you foster two-way communication? You can provide your email address. That's probably the easiest. And then it's also good for parents who maybe don't feel comfortable on email or aren't very technology savvy if you provide times that they can give you a call or that you can return a call. So your planning period, before school, after school, lunchtime. And then, of course, I would always recommend that you give the school's number. If you have an extension with voicemail, you can provide that, or they can leave a message. But if you don't, then they probably need to call the front office and leave you a message, which the front office can easily get to you. And then you need to return that call during the times that you've specified. This makes it very obvious that you're willing to engage in two-way communication, which is obviously the best way to have as much success with your students as possible, is to be in constant communication with your parents. So make sure you provide that and then finalize it with an APA formatted reference page. You will probably need to include the CPALMS link as one of your references. If you've gotten any help from your directing teacher, or you've gotten any help from colleagues, or you've got district curriculum maps, you can cite those different things. You might also cite the grading guidelines if you're in Volusia County Schools and add that to your reference list, because all of those are things that you use to help create this particular assignment. Now, when you actually give this out to parents, I would not expect you to give them the cover page or give them the APA formatted reference page, but those are for this assignment because this is a college class and this needs to be turned in as an APA formatted assignment. So that should help with explaining how this assignment works. If you have any additional questions, you can certainly ask me in class, or you can email or text me. But good luck, and I look forward to reading your syllabus and parent letter.